It's just, ugh. Hey everyone, hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all the things that I read or finished or DNF'd in December of 2023. I'm like, what year is it? What month is it? What are we covering? I have no idea. So if you are new to my channel, then welcome, a special welcome to you. I am Shelly, as I think I've already said. I don't know, I've sort of restarted this intro a couple of times. But anyways, I love books and reading. I read across the genre spectrum. I love all kinds of reading, and if you are liking the vibes, I would encourage you to subscribe. And without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. I don't usually talk about DNFs, and I also don't typically set goals. However, I do want to be a little more transparent about books that I picked up and then that didn't work for me, and the books that I DNF, which sometimes I start a book, and by the time I sit down and talk to you about the books that I've read, it's literally gone out of my mind. I do not remember that I started the book and then DNF'd it because it feels like it was eons ago. But I'm trying to make a more concerted effort to be, I don't know, transparent or honest about what books I started and then stopped, and, you know, just to fill you all in, to keep you all abreast of my reading life. So I will start with three, I think it was three, but one I already spoke about. So I know that I already spoke about, what is it, Books and Latte, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I think I said that in my November wrap-up. I did start it and I DNF'd it. Wasn't for me, not my kind of book. Then, I kind of have a lot of DNFs, but that's okay. It's okay. I started and I read quite a chunk of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy by John le Carré. I read about 30% I read it on my Kindle, so they have percentages. I read about 30% of that book. I got like 80 or 90 or even 100 pages in. And I was like, what is happening? And not in a ironic way. Not in an ironic way at all. I was literally like, I don't know what's going on. I figured out what was going on, but boy, did it take a lot of effort. I also started reading this at the very beginning of the month. His writing is superb. I have no doubt that it is a beautiful, wonderful, amazing, mind-blowing, incredible work. However, I was reading it as I was wrapping things up from school. I think I had the flu in between, like that read. I was like super sick amid reading it, or I was getting sick. I was wrapping things up for school because I'm a teacher. And at one point, myself and my buddy reader Anita, we were like, this is not the vibe. This is not what we want. And we felt defeated. Well, I'll speak for myself. I felt defeated by that book. I was like, very rarely do I get into a book so far, like 30% or even halfway, and I'm like, I couldn't even summarize the plot for you. I mean, I feel like I'm a rather attentive reader, and I pay attention to what's happening. With this book, I was so confused. So the link says, now that I'm confessing, I'm like, let's just keep the confessional rolling. I ended up listening to an adaptation radio drama of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I listened to the first third of it to match with what I had read to make sure that I was actually understanding what was going on. I think some of it was, I don't know. I don't know what lost me. I know it's like the fourth in a series, and a couple of people said it's a standalone, I can read it and it's fine, but I was just so confused that I really feel defeated by that book, and I'm scared to read another John le Carré. I was so sure that this author was for me. I was so sure, and then to be whipped by him, I was like, whew, do I even know my own reading taste? So that really shook my world. Who knows? I will try again. I will try again, and I will see if I like it. Maybe I'll watch the movie first and then read the book. Maybe that's the combination I need to go to. I need to move on. This is just, I'm going too far down this trail. So the next DNF was Ohio by Stephen Markley. I started this and I really, really didn't care for it. It was not the vibe. I started it like right after Christmas, and it was about a drug-addled town, and it really had sad town vibes, sad people vibes, depressed people, and there was sort of I'm going to sound like a prude. I am going to sound a certain way, and that's okay. I'm just aware that I'm sounding a certain way, but the certain way is that there was language being used that really bugged me. There was just like it was just like lots of sexual talk, but sometimes that kind of thing, it just doesn't bother me. Like it's in there, and I'm like, it goes with the story. But in this sense, I felt like the crude talk was really contributing to the unlikableness of the characters, and that was probably Markley's intent, and I was not vibing with that intent. So though I'm not like a strict person when it comes to crude language or cursing or, you know, all of that, it's kind of like how you use it, how the author uses it, and the purpose they're trying to make. For example, Demon Copperhead had tons of language here, there, and everywhere, and I felt like that really fit with his background, his character, who he was, and in a lot of ways, like him being Demon Copperhead being Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Demon being Demon really helped me sink into his character, sink into his personhood, make me understand him more. I like that he was who he was, and he kind of didn't care about what anybody thought. However, Stephen Markley's Ohio, I was just like, I don't like it. I don't like all the references. It's just, ugh. And it was really contributing to my dislike of the characters and overall my experience. So I DNF'd that one. All right, let's get on to the books I actually finished. I'm gonna go worst to best. I think it'll work out that way, starting with the DNFs and then moving up the ladder. I also want to say that I reread several books, or a full book and several things, and one that I'll get into it, but it's for an event. Remember December. Myself and a bunch of other people are hosting this event. It is fantastic, and we're celebrating the love of rereading. And so I wanted to just make note that I was a host of that event, and that really shaped my reading life. And you should check out the hosts for this event because it was phenomenal. Like, great host, wonderful vibes, and just sinking into the joy of rereading, which is just phenomenal. It's so great. And yeah, so I just wanted to kind of put that out there before I actually got started. So a book that took me literally forever and a day to finish. I really shot myself in the foot with this one because I was like, I'm gonna annotate it. I'm gonna do this annotation project. I think this was like back in September or something. I was like, I'm gonna do this annotation project. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna be like 30 days of annotations. I'm gonna do a video on it. This is gonna be me now. Whew, yeah, no. I rebelled against that hard. So it was Two Star of the Dark by Doireann Ghríofa. Doireann Ghríofa is somebody who wrote, or she's the writer of A Ghost in the Throat. A lot of people read that, I think last year or the year before, for the BookTube Prize. If you don't know anything about the BookTube Prize, I will leave the BookTube Prize's channel link down below. It's a literary prize here on BookTube, and it is wonderful. And so I had already read something by this author, A Ghost in the Throat. Beautiful book, really engaging writing in a lot of ways. Some of it didn't work for me, but her main gig, her main thing, Doireann Ghríofa's main thing is poetry. So I was gifted this by my father-in-law, and I was like, I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna annotate the heck out of it. I'm gonna notice when she is using literary devices and language devices, and I'm just gonna do the whole thing. And yeah, I read about half of this, and then I was like, I could not force myself to read anymore. I don't know, all of a sudden it became this big challenge in my mind, and I had to take a break from this. Look at this. This little thing with me. This little thing really just stole my joy for a little while. And so I took a break from this for like 2 months, and then I was like, I don't want to continue to have this lingering on my currently reading shelf for the rest of my young life. So I'm going to finish it. And I did, and I really liked it. There's definitely some beautiful themes in here, such as Like, she plays around with a lot of imagery in terms of lightness and darkness. There is a lot of references to blood and to, there's like a lot of cosmic references, like, you know, two star or the dark, and nighttime and daytime and all of that. And then she also references the fact that she's a mother. And so that's another one of the themes in this poetry collection. I thought it was beautiful. I really need to just reread it without any projects in mind, without any of that baggage in mind, and I think I will actually get more from it if I read it that way. A book that made it into my top 5 of nonfiction, so you probably all have heard me rant about this, so I won't say too much, but it was, you know, I was about halfway done when I did my November wrap up, and so I did want to come back around and say that Trevor Noah's Born a Crime was amazing. Was amazing. This was great. So Trevor Noah was born during apartheid in South Africa, and he was literally born a crime. What I loved about this book was that he is very funny. He's very funny. Very, very interesting childhood, fantastic childhood. I love that he could find the humor in any situation, quite literally. And I love that it was really a tribute to his mom. He really honors his mother in this book. And I think he really owes a lot of his humor and the way he sees life to her, because she sounds like a hoot and a half, to be honest with you. And I just love this book. I thought it was great. Now, I don't know anything about his celebridom or what he's doing today. I have no idea about Trevor Noah, and to be honest, I don't really care. I just love that he was writing about his life in a country that I don't know that much about, and he grew up in a way that I have no idea about. There's no name dropping, there's no talk about how famous he is, there's none of that, which for me also really made the book. I don't care about Hollywood or any kind of celebrity. I'm just like, I don't even watch TV anymore, y'all. It's bad. Like, in terms of like a television watching person, like, that is not me. So if he had a lot of that in this book, it really would have kind of turned me off to the read. But instead, he talks so much more about just this incredible childhood that he had, and it was so, so funny. A book that I also dipped into for Remember December as a rereading treat, if you will, was Stag Sleep by Sharon. I read the first maybe, I don't know, 10 poems, and I started to sticky tab this. I read this last year. It is a poetry collection mostly of the time in which Sharon Olds accounts this time in which her husband announces that he wants to divorce her, and the falling apart of their marriage and their divorce and the fallout of kind of all of that relationship and messy emotional situation. I read this again back in, not last year, not in 2023, but in 2022, and it was one of my top reads of 2022. I really thought this was phenomenal. And so I just wanted to go back to see why it was so good, and I was pulling out some things that I just thought was so special, and I really enjoyed that. Let me see if I can find something. We get little things like this, and I think this is why I have always described this as drippingly honest. Like, it is honest to its core, this beautiful poetry collection. This poem is called Silence, with 2 texts. When we lived together, the silence in the home was denser than the silence would be after he left. Which is just, I mean, you know, just says something about their relationship. And so I went back and I read the first, I don't know, 10, 12 poems, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember why. But it helped me kind of focus in, and I might finish this slowly throughout the year, but it helped me really kind of hone in on why I found it so incredible. I think when I first read it, I was just so taken back by her honesty and her clarity of thought and the way that she kind of sunk me into her words. I mean, I finished this in basically a day. I mean, it's a short little poetry book, but you know, like I just kind of, I devoured this, and then I was like, oh my goodness, it was so amazing, it was so honest, it was so confessional, and I had a hard time articulating exactly why it was like that. So now I'm like, oh, there's this line, and then there's this line, and she's revealing this about herself, and on a reread, it's actually helping me pull out exactly, like in a very detailed way, exactly why I found it so honest and so confessional and so beautiful. And so I'm really glad that I picked this up, and I don't think I would have picked it up if it wasn't for Remember December. A book that I started and I'm still currently working on is Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. This is a phenomenal book. This was gonna be my main reread, and then I ended up picking up something else. You know, I'm still gonna reread it. I started it in December. It's gonna carry over into 2024. This is amazing. Jane Eyre's strength of character is fan-freaking-tastic. Like, it is so good. If you have not read a classic, if you're like, I am not sure, I only read contemporary books, I don't know if like older books are for me. If you are one of those people and you want a place to start, I know this is a chunky book, but goodness gracious, it is so readable. We are in the perspective of Jane Eyre, and she is definitely telling the story as a person who's lived her life, and she's looking back. And so she can talk about these pivotal moments in her life and why they were so pivotal. So you have this sense of like somebody telling you their life story, but also kind of inserting these moments in which she had a moment of clarity, a moment of understanding, or even a moment that ended up being transformative for her moving forward. There's something really, really special about this book, and I am reminded as to why I love it, and I'm so excited to continue with this journey of Jane Eyre as I move through the month of January. Just a phenomenal read. Okay, actual books I finished. Here we go. Actual books I finished. These are like, I don't know, if I star rated my books, these would be like my 4-star reads. So the first one would be Doc by Mary Doria Russell. I picked this up because I thought Steve Donahue had ranted about it. I mean, I knew he ranted about Mary Doria Russell, but I thought it was Doc that he ranted about. I went back and I looked, and it wasn't Doc. It's the follow-up to Doc. It is the book Epitaph that he had ranted about. And so here I was thinking that I was reading one of Steve Donahue. Steve Donahue is he writes he's a book critic, and he has, you know, his gig is written reviews for publications here in the US. And so here I was thinking this book is going to be this blow my mind away book, and then about halfway through I was like, wait, Steve didn't rant about this book, he ranted about a different book? What am I doing? No, I kid. But the thing is that this book started off very strong, very, very strong. It is about Doc Holliday, John Henry Holliday, and his life, and not his full life, but up to the point that he's in, I think it's Dodge City. And you see him meet and develop a relationship with Wyatt and Morgan Earp. Oh my gosh, words forming the mouth hard. And he is, my gosh, he's a character with a capital C. Well, they all are. They're Morgan, Wyatt, Doc, all characters with a capital C. Fantastic. It's interesting though, because as much as I love the characters, I really had to do this thing in which I had to like get help to articulate why this book did not work for me. This book is about a murder, like a murder mystery. The murder of Johnny, who is a townsmember and very beloved by some and obviously not beloved by others because he was murdered. And Doc becomes interested in the murder. And slowly as the book goes on, it kind of pivots away from the murder, and it really focuses on Doc's character. And if you didn't know, Doc Holliday was sort of famously known, well, he's known out for the shootout, I believe, at the OK Corral. We don't even get there in this book, okay? Like, that is not a spoiler. She even reveals that, like, we're not going to get there in this particular book. But Doc is a really interesting person because he was diagnosed with tuberculosis at a young age, and so he knows that he's not going to have a long life, and that really shapes his movement throughout the world and the choices in his life. He has, in this book, a toxic relationship with a woman named Kate, and you see the ups and downs of their relationship. And then, of course, he has his friends, mostly Wyatt and Morgan Earp. And of course, like, I'm not a Western person. I don't know these people. But, you know, I mentioned it to my husband, Ted, and he's like, oh yeah, the Earp brothers. And I'm like, yeah, they're Earp brothers. I don't know anything from anything. But I got to know them, and Doc was really a fascinating character. So anyways, I felt like Mary Doria Russell really worked hard to build up the suspense and the mystery of Johnny and Johnny's murder and why we should care. And then she slowly like pivots away from that focal point to the interesting, tumultuous, and very curious life of John Henry Holliday, who is a dentist in the, you know, early days of the US in a lot of ways. And he is dying of tuberculosis, which is super fascinating. And so weirdly, I really love the character of John Henry Holliday. And I really didn't like the plot of the book, because as I had to read in a bunch of reviews, I was like, why did this book not work for me? And it's like, you have to be okay with a plotless book. And in some ways, I felt like she did herself a disservice, because you think it's going to have this amazing plot because it has a setup for the murder. And she slowly kind of lets that fade, and in the focus is John Henry Holliday. And I'm like, wait, what? Do we have a plot or don't we? I'm so confused. You better believe, though, that I'm going to keep my eye out for Epitaph. And I'm sure that that book will blow my socks off. And even though this one did not. But you can tell she's a great writer. She's a really good writer. She knows what she's doing. She obviously created some incredible characters. And I think that there's other books out there that will definitely jive with me more. Another, like, 4-star read. I don't know. I put it in quotes because I'm like, everything is nuanced. It's all nuanced, okay? And I already talked about this in, I read Emily Fox's book recommendations, and that this book was in it. And anyways, it is Vita Nostra by Marina and Sergey Dyachenko, and it is translated by Julia Meitov Hersey. This has got to be one of the weirdest, and I read some weird books this year. This is one of the weirdest books I read this year, and it was good. The weirdness kept me in its grip. I will say that. My camera battery is about to die. Let me switch that out and I'll be right back. This book is just weird. It's a super weird book. We are following, I believe it's Sasha. We're following Sasha. She gets invited and in a lot of ways coerced to go to this magical school. There's a lot of things couched in mystery and truly like this fantastical, I don't understand what's going on, what is happening moments with Sasha at this school. That she has this really odd, some very contentious in some ways relationship with her mother, but it seems like all of the relationships she has is contentious and odd. And she has this really incredible strength of character. So even though she's at this school for which she doesn't understand its purpose, and as readers, we don't really understand the purpose of this school, she is working really hard to overcome a lot of the challenges the school is presenting towards her, or presenting to her. So she's working really hard, and in a lot of ways I really admired Sasha for her character and the way that she is willing to dive in and break rules, and the character of Sasha was very good. However, there is a sense that it's just a weird book. It is truly like super strange, odd, cuckoo's bananas crazy, dark academia type of book that is for people who are into the murky waters of not understanding exactly what a book is doing. I think there is a second book to this book. There's a second installment in this series, and I think that they clear up a lot of how the magical system works, why the magical system is the way that it is. There was some really delightful moments like time loops, and I think the best part about this book is the strangeness and being kind of sucked in and willing to let it take you along on the journey. And in a lot of ways, it's about transformation and strength of character and finding one's purpose in life or in a situation. And a lot of that was very beautiful. But the thing that just overpowers it all for me is just how weird it is. But that's what kept me reading, though. So it's not a critique. It's like, it was weird, but I liked it. That was probably not helpful at all. This is probably not a helpful review. It's a very difficult book to sum up. And yeah, but if you're into like dark academia and you're ready to go on a sort of strange, cuckoo's bananas crazy, off the rail type of journey, if you are fans of Bunny by Mona Awad, but you want Bunny by Mona Awad, take away the humor, add in The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and mix in an extra dose of weird spicy sauce, then that's what this book is. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking about it. My top 2 books actually made it into my top, one of them made it into my top 5 classics for the year, and the other one made it into my top 5 fiction books for the year. And actually there's another book I need to mention which made it into my honorable mentions for the top 5 fiction books of the year. So I read Missing Joseph. I read this by Elisabeth George. I read this with my friend Anita. We are slowly going through the Linley series together. Elisabeth George has been writing the Inspector Linley series, mystery series, for 30 plus years, and she has a bunch of installments in this series. Her magical moment, the magical moments in this whole series are the relationships between the characters. And I'm not just saying the relationships, like the dynamics between each of the characters, but actually the relationships that they have with themselves. There is Inspector Linley, who's incredible at his job, but sometimes too good at his job in that he lets his relationships with other people suffer. He has his own internal struggles that he's constantly having to work at and to chip away at. He has his partner, Barbara Havers, who is a hot mess express and then some, who often adds a lot of comic relief. And there's also this tension between Inspector Linley, who is considered like higher class in England, and then Barbara Havers, who is considered working class. And so there's this dynamic and struggle between those two. And so you see this beautiful dynamic, grow, change, evolve in every single book. And Missing Joseph was definitely one of those books in which we got to see the characters and their relationships evolve, as we also had a very solid mystery being laid out in front of us. And what was really interesting about Missing Joseph is that the characters that were truly introduced and focused on for this exact mystery, they were really interesting. There was a mother who has a very complicated relationship with her daughter, and the daughter has her friends, and that was a really interesting dynamic. And it was essentially what happened to the vicar of the village. And in the mystery itself, I really enjoyed it. I thought that sometimes what happens with Elisabeth George's mysteries is that they get away from her. She makes them a little bit too big. There are a little too many characters. There's a little too many plot points. I noticed that with Well Schooled in Murder. It was just it almost got a little bit too unwieldy for her to manage into an elegant mystery. And with Missing Joseph, it's like we're back again. And it was a lot more manageable in terms of secondary characters, in terms of who was in the novel. And I thought it worked really well. I really, really enjoyed it. It has to be like one of my favorite installments thus far, and a really strong mystery from her. Interestingly, I seem to be doing this like back and forth thing, but Missing Joseph is number 6 in the Linley series, and I need to go back and read number 5, which is something about someone named Elena. But yeah, so I read 5, even though this is the 6th installment, I've read 5 of Elisabeth George's mysteries. Okay, now moving on. My favorite classic that I've already mentioned. Hopefully I'm in a super chatty mood. I'm just rambling, but that's okay. Sorry, not sorry, So my favorite classic that made it into my top 5 was a reread. I read it in college and I remembered very little, and it was Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey. Now, I've been on YouTube for 3 years, 2.5 years, and every year on YouTube, I have read a Jane Austen. My first year on YouTube, I read Persuasion by Jane Austen. Then last year, I reread in 2022, I reread Pride and Prejudice. And then in 2023, I thought I was not going to read a Jane Austen in 2023. I had missed Jane Austen in July, and I wasn't sure that I was going to get to any. And I did. I was so shook. I surprised my own self. I reread Northanger Abbey, and it was so good. It was so good because not only does it have all of the elements of an Austen novel, love interests, and really complex and beautiful female characters, and really interesting commentary on society and class and a woman's place in the world. It has all of that, but also this is a satire. Our main character is obsessed. What is it, Catherine Morland? Yes, she is obsessed with being the heroine of her own story, which is so charming, and she does it in this very sweet way, I feel. I thought Catherine Morland was a very, very endearing protagonist, but I'm also probably saying that because she, in some ways, the way that she looked at the world, it reminded me of a younger self of my own. I am just somebody who constantly, if you can't tell already, I'm somebody who looks at the world, I look at things with my glass half full. For most of my life I have. There have been times where it hasn't always been that way. And I just tend to do better in my own self, my own skin, in my own heart, when I am looking at things with a lot of grace and a lot of hope. And sometimes that really, it leads to disappointment or frustrations, but I would rather work through the disappointments and the frustrations and still maintain a sense of hope and encouragement through it all than to have it any other way. And in a lot of ways, Catherine Morland approaches her life in that way. But there's also a poking, like Jane Austen is really poking fun, and not in a mean way, but in a very sweet and kindly way. She's poking fun at Catherine Morland because she has this romanticized sense of her life in the world. And the poking fun comes in the form of a satire, in that she's really making fun of Gothic stories, and particularly the Gothic story of The Tales of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe, who our heroine, Catherine Morland, is really obsessed with. She's obsessed with the book, and she's obsessed with Anne Radcliffe. So you can see, it's just got so many lovely twists and turns that it made it for an incredibly enjoyable reread. Now, I really started to question if I actually read this. And there were certain scenes that I remembered so well. They were exactly as I remember them. So I kind of was like, you did get to this book, Shelley, in college. Because college was a whirlwind, and I read so much, and I often had to read so fast beyond what I was comfortable reading, that I know that I missed just chunks of reads because, I read them, but I probably read them so fast and so outside of what I was, outside of the enjoyment of reading, that I just essentially missed those parts in the novels. And so it was so back to kind of go back in and fill in the things that I had missed, and then sort of be like, oh yeah, there were parts that really did stick out with you and have stuck with you for all of these years. And then finally, I read this back in November, but it was the creme de la creme. it was one of the best that I had read. Again, it was for my Emily Fox video, and it made my top 5 fiction reads. And then, and then I'll mention just super quickly some manga that I've been reading. But anyways, it is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. Now, I have not been really buying brand new books lately. I often buy used books, and I don't really pay full price anything brand new. I don't really buy or treat myself to all that often. But I had heard about this on Emily Fox's channel, and I was like, that just sounds like a Shelley book. 40 women in a bunker living in a time in which they have no interaction with men, and it's mysterious and mind-blowing, slightly dystopian and bleak. That is for me. And so I bought this actually full price, and so I wanted to make sure that I very much prioritized it and very much read it right away, and I did. And it was really, really, really good. Very, very thought-provoking. I really think that Emily Fox is the front runner to Jacqueline Harpman's like renaissance here on BookTube. Like I really feel like her books are appealing to younger readers. The word is getting out there that she has some incredible books, not just this one, but there's more out there to love. And I don't really want to say too much about this book. However, I will say this, that I found the themes of this book not bleak in the least. I mean, there are some sad moments. I really thought about the way we are able to adapt and create new meaning in our lives. And I thought that was really powerful. And of course, there were some super sad moments in this novel. And it is really a bit off the rails in some ways. However, I was so, in some ways, encouraged by this little book that could be considered bleak, that it made me love it. It didn't shy away from some of the hard stuff. It was just so good. It was just so good. And I'm really appreciative that Emily Fox has been raving about this, and now I'm going to be raving about this. It was such a really thought-provoking, didn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't have long sections where you have to like trudge through. I was really engaged throughout. And I thought, man, that's such a feat. Again, it's not a super long novel. It's, I think, about 188 pages, so about 200 pages. And it was just like the perfect little bite of goodness in a reading life. So that, and it complex, beautiful, amazing. Okay, I'm gonna stop. So if you have made it through, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. What did you read in December that you loved? I want to know. Please share. Or what did you DNF? That would be really interesting as well. I'll try and pin a comment too with these questions down below, because I know that not everybody gets to the end of these videos. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all in my next one. Bye!